After being in Auschwitz just a few days or so, we had some visitors that came to the barrack that I stayed in. It was one officer and two of his soldiers. All of us had to stand at attention when they walked in and while this officer spoke to us. And he began by saying, I want all of you to remember this real well. This is Auschwitz. Auschwitz is a concentration camp where people will work or be sent to the gas chambers. If you're strong enough and are able to work, you may survive. If you're not able and cannot work, you'll be sent to the gas chambers. The choice is yours. It will be work or the gas chambers. Then this officer looked around and he asked a couple men to come forward. And he looked at those two men and said to them, I don't believe the two of you will be able to give us a good day's work, and shot both of them right on the spot. And then turned to us, and with that sarcastic smile on his face, said, this I am sure you will always remember. That was our welcoming committee to Auschwitz. While in Auschwitz, I worked in construction, and my job was mostly carrying brick to the construction site. There were days when it was so very, very cold that the skin on my fingers came off from touching the cold brick. Of course, we had no gloves. I also worked in a coal mine where I was too weak to lift the empty huge shovel, let alone a shovel with coal on it. I suppose I was fortunate that the person on each side of me was stronger and I was able to load coal into those cable cars, and the guards did not notice that I was not able to do that. We had a hospital in our camp, and we were told that if any of us get sick or hurt on the job, to report to their hospital and that they will take care of us. Well, it didn't take us very long to find out that anyone that entered that building never came out alive. So regardless of how sick you were, you just wouldn't say anything. We got up every day about 5 o'clock in the morning and received a cup of black coffee and a slice of bread. For lunch, which was the big meal of the day, we received a bowl of soup, which consisted of maybe a little cabbage, potato peels, and whatever garbage they could put into that soup. But when you're as hungry as we were during that time, even that tasted good. In the evening, we again received a cup of coffee and a slice of bread. Now that was our food every day, 7 days a week. The camp was surrounded with barbed wire fences and soldiers on towers with machine guns surrounding that camp. So escaping from that camp was just about impossible. Shortly before the war ended, we were awakened in the middle of the night, and we were told to get ready immediately, that we're being transferred to a different camp. All of us had to get ready at once, and we had to start to march. We had about 5,000 to 6,000 people in the group that I was in when this march started. And by the way, it was not the only march they had. They had quite a few other marches just like that. Later, those marches were called the death marches. After marching approximately 3 days or so, of the 5,000 to 6,000 people that started this march, we may have had about 400 or so people who were still alive. Anyone who could not walk for whatever reason was shot and left behind. Now I knew that I will not be able to go on much longer, so I decided I will run out of that line and try to escape. I knew my chances of succeeding were very, very slim, but at that point it really didn't matter. It was dark, and I believe it was during the night, and I did run out of that line. Excuse me. To this day, I have no idea how far and how long I ran. The only thing I do remember was waking up in a Russian military hospital where I was told that Russian troops had found me lying on the ground unconscious and took me to their hospital. After being in that hospital for a while, they released me and helped me go back to my hometown in Czechoslovakia. I cannot begin to tell you how devastated I was when I did get back to my hometown and found out that no one in my family survived. Throughout all the years, while I struggled every single day, just trying to survive, didn't have a home to go to, lived on the streets for months and months, had to look for food in garbage cans, spent 2 years in a Hungarian prison, and after all that, I wound up in Auschwitz, the most inhumane place anyone can ever imagine, the place that was called the Kingdom of Death, where thousands and thousands of people were murdered every single day. Throughout all that time, the only thing that kept me going was the hope that if I do survive, I will again be with my family. Unfortunately, that did not happen. I stayed in my hometown just a day or two and decided to go to Hungary, to the town where my grandparents and quite a few other relatives lived, with the same results. No one there survived. As I was getting ready to leave the town, and after having so many terrible disappointments in my life, something nice happened. I met this beautiful young girl whom I knew as a little boy. She and her family lived right next door to my grandparents. And in the summertime, when we had no school, we usually spent some time with our grandparents, and we used to play together. By the way, she also is a survivor and lost her whole family. We decided that we would stay in touch with each other. I went back to Germany and stayed in a displaced persons camp, which was now supervised by the Americans. She didn't want to go back because she felt she had an uncle there and she was afraid that he was much too sick and would not leave him by himself. But we did stay in touch with each other. In fact, she told me that she has an uncle in this country, and she got in touch with him, and he promised her that he will help her and bring her out to this country. Well, after being in Germany for a while in that displaced persons camp, I came to this country with a group of orphans. Once we arrived in New York City, I lived in an orphanage. While in that orphanage, we had visitors that came very often. There was one man in particular that was there every Sunday afternoon. Very nice person, always brought us some presents, and always asked many questions of all of us. And every time he came, he asked me where I was from, if I had any relatives or perhaps some friends living in this country. And I gave him the same answers every time he asked me. And I don't mind telling you, after a while, I was annoyed with him, why he just kept asking me over and over those same questions. But later I realized how nice this man really was. He tried to help some kids in that orphanage to see if he can find any relatives or any friends to any of us. Well, a few months later,